All right, so we're diving into some Robert Frost today.
Yes, we are.
Specifically, his poetry collection, The Road Not Taken, and Other Poems,
Hmm.
published in 1916.
Mm-hmm.
This collection is just fantastic. It really digs into those big questions about choices and how they shape us.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's all wrapped up in that signature Frost style, the way he can make profound thoughts about life and nature feel accessible to everyone.
Right. He's not afraid to be simple, but there's always that deeper layer of meaning there.
Exactly. So to really appreciate his genius, we need to take a close look at each poem, almost like we're unpacking a treasure chest one gem at a time.
I love that analogy.
So let's start at the very beginning with the section aptly titled The Road Not Taken.
Okay.
And of course, this section kicks off with the poem of the same name, probably Frost's most famous work, right?
Definitely one of his most popular, for sure.
I mean, who hasn't heard those lines? Two roads diverged in a yellow wood.
Right. It's become so ingrained in our culture.
But here's the thing. This poem is often misinterpreted.
Oh, absolutely.
People tend to take it at face value, as a celebration of nonconformity, of choosing the path less traveled.
The road less traveled by, that's the line everyone remembers.
Right, but if you really dig into the text, it's much more nuanced than that.
Much more.
The speaker in the poem is faced with two paths that look pretty much identical.
Yes, and he even acknowledges that neither is inherently better than the other.
That's the part that always gets me. He even says, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves, no step had trodden black. It's like he's saying, hey, these paths are pretty much the same.
Right. Exactly.
So what's all the fuss about the choice then?
That's where the poem gets really fascinating.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's not so much about the choice itself, but about how we look back on our choices and how we reinterpret them.
I see.
The speaker claims he took the road less traveled by, but then he admits this might not be entirely true.
There's that hint of irony there, right?
Almost like a bit of self-deception,
Like he's trying to convince himself he made the more daring choice.
even though, deep down, he knows both paths were pretty similar.
What do you think Frost is trying to tell us about human nature here?
I think he's exploring our need to create narratives about our lives, to make our choices seem more meaningful, more significant.
Even if they weren't.
Exactly. We like to believe we're forging our own unique paths, but often the reality is much more ambiguous.
It's not about the choice itself, but about the stories we tell ourselves about our choices.
Precisely. And that's what makes Frost so brilliant. He can pack so much depth and nuance into these seemingly simple poems.
Absolutely. Okay, moving right along in this Road Not Taken chapter, we come to Christmas trees.
Ah,
Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the title, I pictured something a little more, jolly.
Right, something more festive.
Yeah, a little more in line with the whole holiday spirit.
Well, Frost does have a way of surprising us, doesn't he?
He does, and Christmas trees is a great example of that.
He uses this everyday event, the selling of Christmas trees, to talk about something much deeper.
Like what?
The complexities of human relationships, the compromises we make in life, all those things we grapple with.
Wow, I wouldn't have connected Christmas trees to all that.
It's subtle, but it's there.
Right from the start, the poem feels very conversational.
Yeah.
Like we're listening in on a negotiation between the speaker and someone who wants to buy his trees.
Exactly. That's one of Frost's strengths, capturing the rhythm of everyday speech.
It makes the poetry feel very grounded, very real.
But beneath that surface simplicity, there's always that deeper meaning waiting to be uncovered.
Okay, so let's unpack that deeper layer in Christmas trees.
Right.
What's really going on beneath the surface of this simple transaction?
Well, the speaker is hesitant to sell his trees, not because he's greedy or anything like that.
So why is he hesitant?
He sees them as more than just things to be bought and sold.
Right.
They represent something personal to him, something connected to the land, maybe even to his own sense of identity.
It makes you think about how we assign value to things, to people, to experiences.
Absolutely, and that's the question Frost is posing in this poem.
He's making us think, but he's not giving us any easy answers.
Exactly.
And in the end, the speaker does agree to sell the trees, but there's a sense of resignation there.
Almost like a touch of sadness.
Like he's letting go of a part of himself.
Exactly, and that feeling, that awareness of the compromises we make, it's a theme that runs through so much of Frost's work.
Christmas trees definitely makes you think. It's not your typical festive poem, but it stays with you.
It does.
Now, moving on to the next poem in this chapter, we have an unstamped letter in our rural letterbox.
This one is
It
interesting.
really dives into those themes of rural life, the isolation, the way people communicate even when they're not directly speaking.
Right, those subtle interactions.
You can practically hear the wind whistling through the trees in this poem. Feel the isolation of that mailbox standing alone by the road.
Frost is a master at setting the scene, using imagery to draw you into the world of the poem.
And that unstamped letter, it becomes a symbol of something hidden, something left unsaid.
Like a little mystery waiting to be solved.
The speaker is curious about the letter, of course, but he also respects the privacy of whoever sent it.
There's respect for boundaries there, for the unspoken rules of rural life.
And it makes you think about how we approach those kinds of situations in our own lives.
Do we pry? Do we respect the silence?
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful commentary on empathy and discretion.
Even in the face of our natural curiosity.
This poem really highlights Frost's ability to create a whole world, a whole set of relationships in just a few lines.
He gives you just enough to spark your imagination and then lets you fill in the rest.
It's like a miniature drama unfolding right there in that lonely mailbox.
I love that.
Okay, next up in the Road Not Taken chapter, we have A Patch of Old Snow.
Another intriguing title.
It's a short poem, but it's so evocative. It reminds me of those moments when you see something small, something seemingly insignificant, and it suddenly sparks a whole train of thought.
Right, those little epiphanies we have.
Yeah, exactly. And Frost is a master of that, finding those profound meanings in the everyday details of life.
In A Patch of Old Snow, he takes something as simple as, well, a leftover patch of snow and turns it into a reflection on time and memory and loss.
I love how he describes the snow grimy and discolored.
Not exactly a picture postcard winter scene, is it?
Not at all. And then he compares it to a forgotten letter.
That's such a powerful image, something precious that's been neglected, forgotten.
It really makes you think about all the things we lose track of over time.
Our memories, our experiences, even the people we love.
It's a reminder to cherish those moments while we have them.
Right.
Because they do fade like a patch of snow in the springtime.
And then the last poem in this opening section is In the Home Stretch.
This one feels different.
It does. It takes us inside into a farmhouse.
And we meet a couple who are moving in.
It's a new beginning for them.
But there's also that sense of what they're leaving behind.
That bittersweet feeling of moving on.
I love how the woman describes their old house as a living part of us.
Like it held all their memories and experiences within its walls.
It speaks to that universal experience of leaving the familiar and venturing into the unknown.
Whether it's a new home, a new job, or a new chapter in life.
We all experience that feeling at some point.
Absolutely, and Frost captures it beautifully in this poem.
In the home stretch feels like a perfect way to end this first section. It sets the stage for all that's to come.
The themes of home and belonging, the ever-changing nature of life, they're all there.
It's a great starting point for our journey through this collection.
Absolutely. So now we move into North of Boston, the next chapter in the collection.
And the poems here, they have a different feel, don't they?
They do. They're longer, for one thing, more like stories told in verse.
Yeah, it's like Frost is really digging into the lives of these rural characters, showing us the challenges they face.
The isolation, the hard work, the unspoken emotions.
It's all there.
The first poem in this chapter, Mending Wall, is a classic.
It's the one with the famous line, "Good fences make good neighbors."
Exactly. But it's so much more than just a catchy phrase.
Yeah, I remember studying this one back in school. It really makes you think.
Frost uses the simple act of mending a wall to explore all these bigger ideas about human connection and the boundaries we create between ourselves.
It starts with that great line, "Something there is that doesn't love a wall."
Setting up that tension right away, that idea that walls are somehow unnatural.
And then you have this back and forth between the speaker and his neighbor, who's all about keeping that wall intact.
Good fences make good neighbors, he keeps saying.
But the speaker, he's not so sure.
It makes you question the reasons we build walls, both literally and figuratively.
Are they protecting us? Or are they isolating us?
Frost doesn't give us any easy answers, he just makes us think.
And that's what makes him so great.
Now the next poem, The Death of the Hired Man. This one is really powerful.
Oh yeah, it's a tearjerker for sure.
It's the story of Silas, a dying farmhand who returns to the farm where he once worked, seeking shelter and compassion.
And you have the farmer, Warren, and his wife, Mary, each with their own perspective on Silas and what they owe him.
It's a beautiful exploration of human nature, the tension between our sense of duty and our own personal struggles.
You really feel like you're right there in that farmhouse kitchen with them, listening to their conversation.
Frost's use of dialogue is masterful, so realistic.
Silas, He's such a tragic figure, a man who's spent his life searching for a place to belong.
And in his final moments, he just wants to come home.
It's a reminder to treat everyone with kindness and compassion. We never know what burdens others are carrying.
Then we have A Servant to Servants.
This one is haunting.
It gives voice to a woman struggling with isolation and despair in her role as a farmer's wife.
It's a stark look at the hardships faced by women in that time and place, the lack of autonomy, the endless work.
Her voice is so raw, so full of longing for something more.
It's a reminder that even in the most beautiful settings, people can be struggling with hidden pain.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that, to look beyond the surface.
Now, let's talk about after apple picking.
This one is so rich with imagery, you can practically smell the apples and feel the autumn air.
I love that line. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend.
It evokes this feeling of precarity, this sense of teetering on the edge.
And the whole poem has this dreamlike quality to it.
Many see it as a reflection on life itself, the exhaustion of striving, the inevitability of rest.
And maybe even the idea of death as a kind of sleep.
Frost leaves us with that ambiguity, that lingering question of what it all means.
Okay, moving on to the code.
This one focuses on the world of work, the unspoken rules that govern men's interactions, especially in dangerous jobs.
There's a lot of pride and loyalty in this poem, but also a sense of danger.
The central incident, a miscommunication that almost leads to a serious accident, highlights the importance of clear communication.
Especially when the stakes are high.
Exactly. One wrong move could have devastating consequences.
It's a reminder to pay attention, to be aware of the unspoken cues and dynamics in any situation.
Now, let's shift gears a bit with The Generations of Men.
This one feels like a journey through time.
It is. It explores themes of legacy and memory, the ties that bind us to the past.
I love the structure of this poem. It's like we're eavesdropping on a conversation between two distant relatives.
Who are piecing together their family history bit by bit.
And the setting, the ruins of their ancestral home, it's so symbolic.
It represents the passage of time, the way things change and decay, yet also leave behind traces of their existence.
It's a reminder that we're all part of something bigger, a continuum of generations.
And then we have The Housekeeper.
Another look at the complexities of human relationships.
This one explores the dynamics between a man, his housekeeper, and the lingering presence of his deceased wife.
There's so much unspoken tension in this poem.
The housekeeper, Estelle, is devoted to the man, but also resentful of the way he idealizes his late wife.
And the man, John, he's trapped in his grief, unable to fully appreciate Estelle.
It's a sad but realistic portrayal of how grief can affect our relationships.
It shows how difficult it can be to move on, to let go of the past and embrace the present.
Now let's end this section with The Fear, a real page-turner.
Oh yeah, this one will keep you on the edge of your seat.
It's a psychological thriller in verse. A husband and wife convinced that someone is stalking them in the dark.
Frost is a master of suspense, using sensory details to create this atmosphere of fear and paranoia.
You can feel their hearts pounding as they approach their house, their imaginations running wild.
And that twist ending, when we find out the source of the noise, was just a silk dress.
It makes you question the nature of fear itself.
Or the things we're most afraid of, often just figments of our own imagination?
That's the question Frost leaves us with. All right, we're on to the final chapter of the collection, The Hill Wife.
In this section, it feels different again.
Yeah, more intimate somehow, more focused on the inner lives of the characters.
There's a sense of loneliness here, a longing for connection.
The first poem, the one that gives the chapter its title, The Hill Wife, is a perfect example of that.
Oh, this one is heartbreak.
It's told from the husband's perspective.
And he's totally oblivious to what his wife is going through.
He's so focused on his own work, his own routines.
He completely misses the signs that she's unhappy, that she feels isolated in their remote farmhouse.
It's a classic case of two people living side by side but not really seeing each other.
It makes you think about those subtle ways in which relationships can break down.
The lack of communication, the unspoken needs.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
Now, putting in the seed, this poem shifts gears a bit.
It's more hopeful, more focused on the idea of renewal.
Frost uses this metaphor of planting seeds to explore the cyclical nature of life.
Death and rebirth, the constant cycle of growth and decay.
And he connects it to the act of writing poetry, seeing both as forms of creation.
That line, the sturdy seedling with arched body comes shouldering its way and shedding the earth crumbs.
It's such a powerful image, that sense of life pushing through the darkness.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of hardship, there's always the potential for something new to emerge.
Then we have A Time to Talk, a short but poignant reflection on the importance of human connection.
Those moments when we pause, when we really listen to each other,
The simple act of leaning on a fence and chatting with a neighbor.
it can be so meaningful, those little exchanges.
They remind us that we're not alone, that we're part of a community.
Now, The Sound of Trees, this one explores those conflicting desires we all feel, the pull between stability and change.
The speaker is drawn to the sound of the wind in the trees, the suggestion of movement and possibility.
But he's also aware of the risks involved in leaving behind the familiar.
It's that classic Frost dilemma, the tension between staying put and venturing out.
And the ending, I shall be gone long before you know. It leaves us hanging, doesn't it?
It does. We don't know if he actually makes that leap of faith.
It's up to us to imagine what happens next.
All right, let's talk about Out.
This one is tough, really tough.
It's one of the most tragic poems in the collection.
The story of a young boy who loses his hand in a farming accident.
The imagery is so stark, so real, you can almost feel the pain.
And the way Frost describes the family's reaction, their stoicism in the face of this terrible loss.
It's a reminder of the harsh realities of life in that time and place.
But also a testament to the human spirit, our ability to endure even the most unimaginable tragedies.
And finally, we come to The Ovenbird.
The last poem in the collection.
It brings us back to the natural world.
The Ovenbird song, it's described as a minor strain, a kind of lament for the passing of summer.
It's a reflection on the cyclical nature of life, the inevitability of change.
And that final question, what to make of a diminished thing?
It stays with you, doesn't it?
It makes you think about loss, about aging, about the way things fade over time.
But maybe it's also a question about how to find meaning and beauty even in those diminished things.
That's a great point.
So there you have it, The Road Not Taken and Other Poems.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. Frost takes us on these emotional roller coasters, making us laugh, cry, and think all at the same time.
He really captures the complexities of life, both the joys and the sorrows.
And he does it all with such simplicity and grace, using language that feels both timeless and immediate.
His poems stay with you. They make you see the world in a new light.
And they invite you to keep asking those big questions about life, about choices, about what it all means.
If you're looking for a collection of poetry that will challenge you, inspire you, and stay with you long after you finish reading, I highly recommend The Road Not Taken and Other Poems.
You won't be disappointed.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.